right, so today we will be having a discussion with Matt.Corey, a recruiter focused exclusively on hiring data scientists. Matt is a data science recruiter, the founder of Change Force, the recruitment practice that's focused, as I mentioned, exclusively on hiring data scientists. He is extremely passionate about the space and was kind enough to agree to have an interview with us today. Thank you for that, Matt. Before we begin, would you please provide a background or an overview of your background?
Well, Kate, first of all, obviously, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure. Yes, you're absolutely right. You know, we're both very passionate about data science, and it's a fantastic space to be in. I think a lot of people who are in this area are really very keen on learning, sharing material, and it's great to be able to have, a part of that in terms of, playing a role in that and being able to offer candidates, data enthusiasts, information and be able to sort of help each other. In terms of my background, yeah, I mean, so this accent is North American, specifically from Canada. So I was born in Canada, lived there for about 20-something years, came over to Europe, so I'm now living on the other side of the pond. Started off in here, obviously in London, in the UK. Started off in HR, human resources, then moved into recruitment. I'm also a coach. My education has been in psychology. And so I was always sort of fascinated with neuroscience, and I think there's an element of that even within data science. And in the end, I just thought, you know what, I'm really very, very passionate about change and transformation, and I feel that data and data science is the real, the area that really stands out now in terms of change, and that's happening through machine learning, deep learning, and especially artificial intelligence.
Right, exactly. Thank you for that. So the first question I had for you was, what factors do you believe make a difference when you're hiring one candidate versus another? So what do you typically look for in a candidate, and are there any qualities that stand out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what happens is that obviously initially, when I receive a resume or a CV, it's something that obviously I receive, and if someone's asking me for help, then fine, I will help them. It really comes off to, what's being asked. So obviously if it's the candidate approaching me, if it's just a resume that's being sent, then fine, it's fantastic. It goes into our database, it goes into our pipeline of sort of individuals that we can approach or, of course, put forward to clients.
Right.
If it's an actual position that's being advertised, then obviously there's a certain role, and this individual or individuals are applying for this position. So if they send the resume, depending on how it looks, obviously presentation is important because that's the first thing that one sees. And it's also about the individual, do they make a call? And I think it's all right for candidates to make calls to recruiters, to say, oh, by the way, have you received my resume? Have you received my CV? I'm really passionate about this role, really keen on it. I'd like to be a part of that organization.
Right.
So it shows an added interest. It's all right. I think there are recruiters out there who some like it, some don't.
Right.
You get that phone call. But I think first impressions count. So the initial impression is, of course, that document, the CV, the resume that's being received. In terms of standing out from one candidate to another, I think it comes down to also what the actual client is looking for. So he or she is asking for, yes, a data scientist. Is there a sort of a preference for maybe machine learning, or is it more in terms of certain programming languages or certain skills? So that's where issue between the other. It's not about the recruiter, it's more about the actual client and what they are looking for.
Right. So you mentioned the document itself. Just a quick question on that. Is there anything in particular that you look for? Is it something that's unique, that stands out from other documents, that you can maybe provide some tips for potential candidates in the future?
Sure. I think one of the, obviously, people talk about having PhDs and that is the sort of entry point. I mean, in terms of people opening doors because you have a PhD, and it's not.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that I think we've all sort of within the community now, within the data science community, seen that on LinkedIn as well. Having a PhD. So I want to sort of make that a point that it's not having it and then suddenly all these doors open up. It's not. I think employers look for experience. And I'm going to underline that word, experience. Mm-hmm. And as much as possible within that respective industry. And I think that's absolutely key in terms of having the experience, showing that in terms of examples, mm-hmm. But also I would have to say one thing that is really, really important for a candidate to do is to show the experience as achievements on the resume, on the CV.
Well, by achievements, what do you mean?
Sorry? Sure. Achievements in terms of actually what kind of either savings they've made for the company, in terms of, could be savings, it could be amount of time reduced, it could be a more, greater profit, more sales, something that stands out and ideally recorded as a numerical figure, a percentage. It could be in dollars, it could be in pounds in this country. Mm-hmm. Something that is tangible that one knows that has been decreased by a certain percentage, or an increase or a decrease of expenses or increase of revenue. Something that a client can understand.
Mm-hmm. Right. So key metrics right on the resume CV that can show the value that they provided, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Exactly that, the value that they can provide, yes.
Mm-hmm. So now, if a candidate doesn't necessarily have all the desired experience, let's say that you do have an actual job description that you're trying to meet the requirements, how can you as a recruiter kind of determine if you think that they'll have the capabilities to learn on the job? Because you can't find a person that's going to 100% fit the job description. So what do you look for outside of that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to differentiate between two terms. And I think that's something which a lot of people at times misunderstand. There is essential and there is desirable criteria.
Right.
Essential is where basically that employer is saying, I definitely want you to have this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, don't apply.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's better to actually maybe not apply. Or if you do apply, simply say, I have X, I have Y, but I don't have Z. Mm-hmm. Because of this, or I'm doing this at the moment. Explain it.
Be upfront, right?
And then apply. But don't, exactly, be upfront, say it. Mm-hmm. And that's the essential. The desirable is basically that other sort of column where people say, it would be, essentially desirable means it would be great if you had this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the one and the other, the essential and the desirable. So, I think it comes down to development, where they are in terms of their own experience, and to what extent, as a result, what is possibly missing? Can it be trained on the job? So one thing which, in terms of something that is sort of talked about a lot is one cannot teach attitude.
Right.
Or having a passion for data,
right.
Or having a curiosity, or having that persistence, that perseverance, to go through the data again and again and again to get the required results. You can't train that. You've got to have it.
Okay.
And if you tell someone to have it, fine. They can apply it to some extent. Mm-hmm. But it's something which, it's also to what extent the employer is willing to train them.
Right. So you're looking for attitude and passion outside of just the desired and must-haves.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Employers say that. They can train people. They'll train them on the skills. But what's really, really important is to have that right mindset going in there.
You can't make somebody have passion, that's for sure. Attitude is a little bit, you can scare people into attitude, but not into passion, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If I can add one thing, it's also about when one prepares for that interview and they go for that job interview and they're there, I think it's also the responsibility of the candidate to really understand where that company is, where they are in terms of their own development, where they want to go to, the values of the company, the mission, the vision.
Right.
These things are key. And to what extent are they actually aligned to that candidate's own goals?
Right.
And want to sort of enter that journey.
Yeah, I think where it gets a little bit difficult is most people that I've spoken to in my LinkedIn network, they tend to apply to hundreds of jobs, right? Hundreds of different companies because it's competitive and they're trying to get as many chances, opportunities as possible. So doing all of that research and spending that time on every company is not very, I mean, it's very time consuming. So do you have any advice for those that are applying to multiple jobs? How can they quickly get a sense of what the company stands for? What do you think they should read, or what should they research really to prepare for that?
Well, I think it's there's a lot that they can do, of course. Obviously, the first thing is to understand the actual job description that they've received or that they've seen either online or that they've received after they've applied to the job ad. Understanding it. If there's possibly any questions, they need to go back to if it's the recruiter, or to go back to the company and ask, by the way, can you clarify on this and this and this? It's all right to do that. You're not expected to know everything.
Right.
And actually, it would be quite silly, unfortunately, if they actually go there and say, oh, actually, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
It's better to say, by the way, I don't understand it. Can you explain that? It's not clear. So it could have actually been a mistake on the company's part, possibly, with the way it was written. It could have been an old job description.
Yeah.
It could have been something which at times has been duplicated, but it was done for another role, which could have been more senior or more junior. So, we had that sort of discussion on LinkedIn as well in terms of, data engineer versus data scientist and versus data analyst, and, what is it, and are they trying to make it look better by calling it a data scientist, but in actual fact, it's a data engineer. So we have these kind of issues that come about. But to go back to your original sort of question right now, there is, of course, the job description to understand it thoroughly. If they don't understand it, again, go back to the company or research it more. Understanding the company, where they are, what are their values, what do they stand for? Does it feel good, in sync with who you are as a person to work for that company, to work for that industry? Are you okay in terms of where it is?
Yeah.
The company also in comparison to the competitors in the industry. Going on Google, looking for articles about them. Possibly there's some things that maybe are very, very positive, some things that maybe aren't as positive. Be aware of them. And because they might even turn around and say, yes, there's been this in the press, and you need to be, to show some understanding of that. So either way, I think it's about being properly prepared,
Right.
thinking about certain questions in advance that they may ask. Even, at times doing a bit of doing like a role play with someone that's close to you and just saying, look, I want you to ask me these questions. And then just doing that, preparing.
Yeah.
And literally even, putting on the attire that you're going to be wearing at the interview and just, and sit down with that person and just do a test.
Yeah.
And just sort of test yourself. It's something that maybe, how many people do that, but it's a good thing to do. And even with the recruiter, I mean, I personally have done that before, where I have prepared candidates, where, we've gone through either a mock interview or the actual presentation that they're going to be presenting, and then sort of telling them that this is good, this could be a bit better, what do you think? And having that sort of, because I think a recruiter's responsibility is to properly prepare a candidate.
Right.
For an interview. It's not about the job description, do you like it? It's about being there, that whole journey, every step of the way.
Yeah, that's very true. Unfortunately, not many recruiters take the time to really sit down with candidates. I have personally had a couple that, would walk me through what to expect at the interview, even some questions to anticipate, and we would practice. No one's told me to dress up yet, so for the practice run, but
basically, as a test run with someone that you trust, that you feel that will sort of ask you questions and then sort of put you on the spot in a nice way,
right,
to prepare you.
Great. And so you touched on this a bit about the job description and the job title, and I do have a question around that. So in your experience, have you seen data scientist jobs, like the title of a data scientist, not have the exact job description of a data scientist? It would be more of an analyst, right? But companies try to recruit talent by luring them in with the title. And on the other side, seeing a title of for example, data analyst, and the job description would be that one of a data scientist. And in this scenario, I'm thinking that they would try to do that to save money, because a data scientist has a pretty high price tag at this point in our life.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see if you had any perspective on if you've seen that happening.
Yeah, I have seen that. And it's, I think that's either where the individual would continue and basically say that that's not exactly what I'm looking for and back out and say, thank you very much. Or in some cases, they've accepted it, fortunately or unfortunately, accepted it and weren't pleased with it because it wasn't as challenging. So it goes both ways. You could be called a data scientist and you're basically either, as you said, a data analyst or a data engineer, not really happy with it, doing it because for some it's a job, and at least it's better than, the title is great, but then they're not doing what they want to be doing. So they're sort of there in hope that you can do better,
right,
which is fine. Everyone's circumstances are different. So, my role is such that, he or she has to be happy with the role. It may not be at times perfect, but it's about it being, are they happy with it? Are they willing to stay or not? And I'd rather a candidate back out if they're not happy.
Okay, that makes sense. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about today was, you as a recruiter, is there anything that you wish candidates knew ahead of time, or some advice that you'd like to provide to candidates for the future?
I think the best thing to always keep in mind is to provide value. Most important thing. Go into an interview, to see an employer and have a discussion, and it's a discussion. As much as possible to view it as a meeting. As a meeting, not so much as an interview in terms of being grilled or being sort of challenged. It's about going in there and saying what you can do for them and believing that what you have to offer is of value to them.
Okay.
Understand their business, understand where they come from, what they're doing, what they want to be doing, and how you provide that, that success, that sort of value to make whatever they want to do and make that successful.
Matt, thank you so much for having this discussion today. Anybody who is interested in speaking to Matt, or if they're looking for their next data scientist, he's definitely here. He can help you. His company is changeforceinc.com. His email address is Matt.Corey@changeforceinc.com, and I will include these links in the video description down below. So Matt, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll chat here again.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks so much.